Hello everyone, my name is Joshua. I'm living in northeastern Japan in a city called Sendai. Thank you again for joining my channel out of the psychopathic forest, or for Japanese viewers, psychopath no mori no soto de. Today I want to talk about how it feels like to cry in front of the narcissist or the psychopath. Not an easy topic for a lot of us. We are often made to feel that when you cry, in fact, you're demonstrating your own weaknesses. Not true. And I'm going to give you 4 examples of what happened in my relationship with the psychopath, and see if you relate to these. If you do, I hope it helps you to understand that you're not at fault, and number 1 and number 2, the other person cares nothing about you. The first instance where I remember crying over the span of some years, so I remember crying 4 times, and yes, I do remember them, because the reaction was so inhumane. The first time I remember doing that was when my guardian died. Now, I've mentioned her in another video. Her name was Barbara. She was in her middle 90s, and she died in 2019 in October, a few days after my birthday, and I'll tell you why I say that later on. But when I got news that she had died, it was such a blow, because this woman and her husband had basically been my guardians my entire adult life. I don't think I'm over exaggerating if I say that from the circumstances I was in at the time, they rescued me. And it turned out that they were some of the greatest influences in my life, in terms of growth, in terms of becoming an adult male, helping me emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, in any way. And when she died, that was sort of, for me, the end of a chapter in my life that was so essential and so played such a vital role throughout, up to that year. And when she died, I remember having dinner a few days after with my psychopathic ex, and we were having dinner at this table that you see behind me. And while we were having dinner, the subject turned to her, and then I let out my emotions and I broke down some. And it needed to happen. I needed to do that, And the person across the table, the psychopath, looked at me and very coldly said the following, I'm paraphrasing: "She wasn't your grandmother. She wasn't your blood relative. Get over it." The get over it part especially rings in my ears. Why is this interesting on another level? It's interesting because not so long before, her grandmother, the psychopath's grandmother, had passed away, had died. And then she, the psychopathic ex, disappeared for about a month. And then on my birthday, shortly before Barbara's death, she invited me for a birthday dinner. And at that dinner she said that she was sorry that she had been in absentia for so long, that she had been grieving her grandmother's death. For me, that was quite alright. I understood, each person has to go through that and deal with it in their own way. But then from there, so soon thereafter, to go to get over it showed me a complete lack of empathy. So much so that I'm not even sure of her grieving during that month. I don't know. I just don't know. Who am I to say something about another person's relationship with their family members? But to have that experience and for it to affect you so much, and then to say to your lover very soon thereafter, get over it, strikes me as being, well, let's just say, vile. I'll give you a second example. In the second example, there had been, from what I remember, two days or so of the most intense emotional abuse. You name it, all of the terms: gaslighting, manipulation, never ended. And this was happening over a period of about 2 days. And finally, I gave in, and I needed help. I needed support because I was losing my mind. And I invited a friend over, and he came to mitigate, because from my perspective, it seemed she wasn't understanding what I was saying, and I couldn't understand why she was saying such abusive things. It seemed to be such a weird thing, and so I needed someone there, and he came, and it was amazing that she still was there. And when he arrived, she immediately portrayed this likeness of maturity and care for me. And once he had gone, we were over the hump, essentially, like it seemed anyway. But then when he had gone, immediately she said, you over-exaggerate to me, she said. You over-exaggerate. Over-exaggeration is a common thing, by the way, that abusers say to you, and especially gaslighting, psychopathic abusers say to you, to make you feel like you're not recognizing a pattern. Rather, you're insane. You're overreacting. You're not overreacting. And I had cried during that time. I was crying because I was so desperate. For her, it meant nothing. I'm going to give you 2 more examples. The third example is, I remember very clearly where I was standing in my bedroom. She walked into the bedroom and she said to me, I have decided to go to a therapist because I need help. That's what she said. Please imagine, after a year and a half of just straight out abuse that no one knew was happening outside, in the outside world, that she would say such a thing unprovoked. It caused me such joy to celebrate this person who I thought was going to be my life partner, not out of any delusion, but out of the simple hope that was what was going to happen. It turned out she was not the person she portrayed herself as being, but I thought, well, then there is hope. You feel like you everything you've given is not a waste. All the resources, all the mental energy, all of that was not a waste. She's getting help, and she's doing it by herself and for herself. You want to celebrate that. And it came out of the blue, so I was so joyous. And I couldn't help but cry, just realizing that we were going to have a future together. The next day she comes back from home, I get back from work, I ask her about her meeting with her therapist, whether it worked out between them, when is she going back, etc. And she said, I don't need to go back. The doctor said, I have no problem. In fact, you are the problem. I mentioned that in a previous video. Again, no professional therapist worth their salt would say such a thing. They never met me. I realized it was all a scam. It was a scam. And then I thought to the previous evening, when she had told me that, it had followed a lot of abuse. And after she told me that and I embraced her and I had those tears of joy, what did she do? She wanted sex. Just sex. That's all she wanted. That was the whole point. To delete, omit all of the abuse, get some sex, say something that sounds nice, maybe go. Maybe she went. I don't think she did, but maybe she did. But the whole point was that. It was total manipulation. The last thing I want to say, the last example, horrifying. The last time I moved in with her was at Yamamoto. I get into the apartment. I furnished the entire apartment, no exaggeration. The third day in, I had a day off, and so I decided that was the day I was going to arrange the apartment. So I put everything together. It took about 8 hours. After she came back home with a real excitement, anticipation, stupid anticipation of the future together, I said, what do you think? Welcome home. And she said, well, I want that painting to go into the bedroom. Now this painting was from a friend of mine, from way back in the day. I love the painting. It's a beautiful painting. And it was on the wall in the living room in a place that is not exposed at all. But she said the reason was she didn't want her friends to see that painting. I thought, but I didn't put it there to be off-putting to your friends. You know, I mean, when we lived together for 2 years, you never once invited a friend or a family member, nothing, no one. So I didn't do it on purpose. She went into a 5-hour rage. A 5-hour rage. This was 3 days in to moving in. And I broke down. I just put my face in my hands and to myself wept. And what did she do? She poked me, laughed sadistically, because she's a sadist. She laughed sadistically and said, you're not a man, you're not a man, you're not a man. And then I had to get out. We all have to get out. I have so many friends that I've heard from through the years who say to me that the way they are treated at home makes them do things that they would never do otherwise. They feel like animals, like they hit the wall, or they break something, or they do this and that because they're pushed so far. They feel like they're animals. They're not animals. They're not animals at all. They're victims. And these people are abusers. One final point. If you're standing next to a pile of dog shit, it stinks. If you wait and stay next to that dog shit, it's still going to stink. So don't do what I did. Don't stay. Get out. Get away from that shit. Get the hell out. And take care of yourself. Because again, the longer you stay in the forest, the more detrimental it will be to your health. As always, thank you very much and have a good day.